The last time you were on. Oh, after the last time you were on, I sent you a bag of coffee.
Yes, sumo. Loved it.
Uh, It's good, isn't it?
It is really good.
I've since given that to Greg Landstow. He does the MCing. I think he's doing Atlas Games this weekend. He did like
Yeah.
Lowlands last weekend. And oh my God. Fuck. What is his name? Misfit coach.
Seth? Oh no, sorry, Seth
No,
would be
that's
there.
Jump Ship. Um, oh my God.
Drew?
This is Drew, yes, thank you. Do you know
Yeah.
why? So I saw him. I swapped him bag of coffee for uh t-shirts because I saw on
Hmm.
his story about a year and a half ago, no longer, pre semifinals pre-COVID, I think, or
Okay.
sanctionals pre-COVID. I,
Sanctionals.
I saw him put a thing up saying that he swapped a t-shirt for coffee, and he was like, I love doing this. So then when I was going to Lowlands, I was like, I messaged him saying, are you going to Lowlands or Strength and Depth by any chance? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to Lowlands. I was like, I'll bring you a bag of coffee. And he was like, okay, how did you, like, because it was like 2 years previously that I'd seen it. And then I got there and I had the bag of coffee. And as I was walking in, I was walking in with my friend, and as he was walking in, I was just about to turn. I realized it was him, and I was just about to turn around, and I had the bag of coffee out of my bag, and then his like media person like put a camera in his face and was asking him questions. So I was like, "Oh, I won't go over now." And I misremembered his name, right? So Chad popped into my head for some reason, and I was like, said to my friend, "Oh, that's Chad from Misfit," and I was like, "Is it Chad though? That doesn't sound right." But anyway, I just dismissed it. So for the whole rest of the weekend, we were calling him Chad, and like other people were calling him Chad, and everyone was calling him Chad that I was talking to about this guy, and I kept forgetting his name was Chad, like it wasn't, but I kept forgetting Chad. And then I'd be like, oh, like, what's his name? The Misfit guy. And then my friend would be like, Chad. I'm like, oh, yeah, Chad, Chad. I keep forgetting his name is Chad. Like, obviously, his name isn't fucking Chad at all. So now, when I remember his name, the first thing that pops into my head is Chad. And then I
Did
spent
you
five.
call him Chad to his face?
No, I didn't call him anything to his face. Thank fuck. That would have been worse. But now I've aired the story anyway. So, but yeah, whenever I try to remember his name, now I get stuck on, no, his name's not Chad, you fucking idiot. And that's all that's happening inside my head. So I don't even have the bandwidth to try and remember what his name actually is. So it's
Dude, that's
true.
so
It's true.
funny. My mom is that way. I've got friends who she like with O'Keefe. She calls him Kiefer. And I'm like,
So Sutherland.
Mom, that's not his name. She goes, yeah, I know, but that's how I remember it. And I was like, so you don't remember his name, so you just call him a different name.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, no, now I know his name, but when I didn't, I would just call him Kiefer because I knew it was close. And I had a buddy growing up who his name was Joseph Daniel. And so one year he would go to school and he would tell teachers, hey, my name is Joe. And then the next year he'd tell them, my name is Danny. And he'd flip back and forth between Joe and Danny. So my mom, we grew up in a small town. And so she knew him forever. And he worked on our farm. So it was myself, him, and a couple other kids that I went to school with, worked on the farm. And she would call him Joe one day. And he'd be like, ah, it's Danny. So he would just mess with her. So she just decided to stop calling him either. And forever to her, his name is now Luke. So I totally get
It's
it.
in the same vein. It's in the same vein as Joe and Danny, in fairness, Luke.
It is.
It slots in nicely. That was good though. So when you hired him, you got three people. That was handy.
Yeah, we got Joe, Dan, and Luke.
Yeah, that's easy. Um, suppose how the day went depending on which of them turned up. Like Joe, notoriously lazy. Danny, hard worker. Luke was
Yes.
great fun. Great fun to be around. Always got the job done.
All different personalities. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope he had a hat that he wore like slightly differently for each
Just like
personality. Like,
twisted a
yeah,
little bit.
if he turned
Yeah.
it backwards, like, oh fuck, Danny's here.
like like that one buddy who turns into a totally different person when you drink.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was at a wedding at the weekend, and I stopped drinking like coming up on 3 years ago.
Oh wow.
Um, and my recovery on my whoop, I was like, I should have just kept drinking. Like Sunday, 26%, Monday, 20%.
Oof.
And it was just because on Saturday we had the baby at the venue, like at the wedding, after the
Mm,
ceremony, because I didn't want to be that guy. But I didn't want him to be that baby. So after the ceremony, I arrived with the baby, and he just fucking cried. Like anytime I had him, he was just crying and wouldn't fall asleep. And then we'd bring him around people, and he'd like put on a big show. And like be like, "Hey guys," and I'd be like, "Oh come on!" Like at least cry in front of everyone. Don't just make it just me. I must have
yeah.
walked about 10 kilometers, like trying to get him to sleep. And then Sunday, my daughter, we're toilet training Sloan at the minute, and it's funny because we're ingraining into her when you need to go to the toilet, you pull down your trousers, you pull down your underwear, you sit down, you go to the toilet, or you lift up your dress, you pull down your underwear, whichever. So I was looking at, like the baby monitor. I was like, lying, I was just about to fall asleep, and I just glanced at the monitor, and I was like, glanced at it and then closed my eyes. And then as my eyes are closed, I was thinking, why am I seeing a bare leg? Like, why I shouldn't be seeing. There was a pattern on her pajama bottom, so why am I seeing? Why am I not seeing the pattern? And I was like, I'm just going to check again just to see. And I opened my eyes and looked at it, and I was like, the pattern is just gone. I don't understand how the oh god, that's her bare arse. It's like she's taken off her bottoms and she's taking off her nappy, like her pull-up that we put on her so that she can just go to the toilet during the night. And I went in and I was like, what's going on? And she was like, I had an accident. I was like, oh, what happened? She was like, took off everything. Like, her speech is good but not great. But I got the impression that she thought she was awake, like thought she was in the living room or whatever, took off everything. In her head, in her dream, she was like sitting on the toilet, but she was just pissing all over her bed. So I
That's
had to change everything. Um, so yeah, I think that explains the recovery on the Sunday. But I should have just kept drinking. Like I suppose at least I have more money now than I would have had.
yeah, yeah,
That's the positive, and I
yeah. It
felt a
gets
bit less
expensive.
shit. Do you drink?
Very, very rarely.
And
I'll have a
beer is
drink
it?
here, yeah, a beer here or there. Like I'll go out for special occasions or like random stuff with my friends if it kind of just happens. But no, I don't ever go like, oh, we're gonna go out and get shit house tonight.
Yeah, I think I had Darren Ellis on recently, and he said like that he loves when people say they're all or nothing because they're just saying that they're nothing. With the exception, as like say of Matt,
Yeah.
who like was all or nothing, or Tia, but like he was like, you don't have it all, so you must be nothing then. Like you haven't, like if you're all or nothing and you don't have it all, you're nothing. That's basically what you're saying.
Oh, I agree
And
with him so much.
and I was like, I used to be all or nothing with drinking. I was like, I'd either be like, no, I'm not drinking, like there's no point, or else I'd be like, if we're drinking, we're drinking. Like, if I don't want to remember anything if I'm drinking. I'm not just going to go and have a beer and then go. I never saw the point in that. Or people who like drink a can at home. I don't get it. Like it'll never.
Yeah, I'm
I don't
kind of
know.
with you there because I'm like I will sometimes. I get it with I love food, right? Like food
Yeah,
is a really big part of my life, and so I do understand like a glass of wine with a meal. That I do. But yeah, for somebody to go out and be like, "Oh, I'll just have like 3 beers." I'm like, why? Like you're gonna feel worse the next day. You're not gonna get a but like it's not gonna be fun.
yeah. You could
I
be
guess if
down
you
like $30 or whatever.
yeah, and I'm like, I guess if you really like beer,
Yeah.
but you're not gonna
Uh,
feel great.
I don't
Yeah,
know. I'd be kind
I'm
of the
with
same
you.
with wine, though. I don't know how anybody likes beer or wine that much. But then I suppose there's probably people that look at me and be like, I don't know how you can like coffee that much.
Yeah, for sure. I see that too. I I really enjoy coffee though, so I don't feel that way.
Yeah. You've moved to Vermont now, haven't you?
I have.
What's the coffee like there?
There
Have
are a
you have
couple
you a new
really
local?
I have a local spot that is purely just out of the fact that I drive by it every day.
Okay,
So
not a resounding endorsement.
it's not. No, it's a decent shop. I knew it was a decent shop when I went in the first time and asked for a shot, and they asked me if I wanted the single origin or like the generic one,
Oh, that's good.
and I was like, okay, cool. Um, but I just don't love the coffee they serve. It's not like anything to do with the shop. I think the coffee is just a little off. There are some really good coffee shops in like Burlington downtown, like the Burlington proper area, but I very, very rarely go in there.
And
My schedule is like I leave the house, I go to the gym, I work in the middle of the day at Matt's house, the gym. Um, we train in the afternoon, and then by that time, I'm like, I got to go home and eat, and then go to bed. Uh, so I'm not like running off to the coffee shop.
what's your so say now, well, we'll do two versions, right? So say 3 weeks ago, no, 4 weeks ago, when you were still deep in training for Mac and you weren't in your taper or whatever, and you were like deep in it. Um, what was that working day like? So how was your day structured? Just say like pick a random day, a Wednesday. How was your day structured?
Yeah, so every day except maybe Saturday and Sunday were the same. Um, I wake up like 7:15 to 7:30. Mal's gonna yell at me. She tells me to wake up at like 6:45, so I have more time before I leave the house. But she also goes to bed really early, so I wake up at like 7:15, 7:30. Get downstairs, get a little bit of food in me. At that point, there's not a ton of time to make breakfast. So typically, what I would do is I'd have a protein shake and a bagel and like a piece of fruit, enough that I had energy for the first session. Get to Matt's house for like 8:27, so Mal doesn't yell at me because we start at 8:30, but Mal will be there like 8:22, 8:20. Um, so we'll warm up for like half an hour and then we train for a while, and then probably from noon to like 2:30 I'll either go home if I don't have a ton of work that like needs to be done immediately, or if I have something that needs to be done immediately, I'll just do it at Matt's house. So I'll either go home or stay at Matt's, drink a protein shake, have a decent sized lunch, and then work until we train again. And so around 2:30, 3 o'clock, we'll train again. We train for a couple of hours, and then once we finish our second session, sometimes we'll hang out at Matt's for a little bit and like chat, or Sammy might have on Friday, she has like burgers made, so we do a burger night. But as soon as I finish training, normally I'm back home, I eat, and then I use the back half of the day to get a lot of the work that I have to do done. So once I eat dinner, I'll just kind of sit in front of the TV and have just like kind of something on in the background and work until I go to bed.
And is when you say work, is that so? Are you doing? Is it exclusively like programming that you're doing, or have there been specific roles like divvied out among you with the app and with like say the back end kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I have a couple roles kind of going on. We all wear a lot of hats.
Yeah,
Because we're relatively small and we're new and we're moving really quickly, we're all doing a lot of different things. So for me, my primary function is, yeah, all the programs I kind of manage, make sure that they're on track. Matt and I write all of them. Sammy writes a lot of sweat. Her and I kind of go back and forth writing that. That's my main function, and then after that, I like am involved in a bit of our partnerships. So O'Keefe will kind of clue me in on those, and I'll help get certain tasks done for that. So like if we're programming an event or we're programming a qualifier, I'll talk to those guys and like figure out what it is that we need to do, and then when we write the workouts, Matt and I will get together and write all of the workouts for. So we're programming Can West. So we write those, test those, and do all of the things that come along with writing an event.
yeah. Who tests them? You?
Sometimes me, yeah. Sometimes
Yeah.
Mal.
When like, because she's so good. Not that you're not, but because she's like ridiculously good.
Yeah.
Do you taper back? Like, do you say like, okay, it took her like 11 minutes, so maybe make the cap 16? Like, or do you like just pretend that that is it? That's the standard.
No, I mean, look at what we just saw last weekend. We can't pretend that's the standard. She smashed it. So yeah, no, we do adjust it
Yeah,
based on that. It is really funny. I mean, so her and I training together every day, like even that, I'll finish something and have to remind myself, like, that was a solid time,
Yeah, yeah.
but she still beat me by a minute.
Yeah, like present company accepted. That was a good time.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I heard Hopper said like that you do like machine workouts and stuff, and she'd be beating him in machine workouts, and it's like physiologically that shouldn't be the case. Like he's like it's weird.
It is. Like, dude, she holds paces on the Echo bike that I would used to hold. So when I moved there, like, we'd finish a workout and I'd go, "Hey, what'd you hold?" And she'd tell me, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, right on." And I like skirt away from telling her what I held, and then the next time I would just be like, "All right, we're going up." So
Yeah,
all my paces have climbed as well.
that's good though.
It is.
Um, do you notice? So I just before we came on, I went onto your just when I messaged you earlier on, I went onto your page and I noticed that you've gone beyond 10,000 followers. You're on like 11,000 or nearly 12,000 followers. And
Yeah.
I think the last time we spoke, you're on like 8 or like 9,000 or something. And obviously that's like you've got an increased focus because of well, like semifinals. You're in a lot of say Mal stories, Matt stories, hard work pays off, like Sammy, Keith. There's a lot of like kind of um you're in a lot of other people's stories, we'll say, and they all have like large followings as well.
Yeah.
Have you noticed? Have you been aware that that's been happening? Have you noticed like, oh fuck, like maybe I need to be careful about what I post or what I say or how I say it, or have you noticed like an increased, I don't know, magnifying glass on you?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, like, if you asked me a couple years ago, I'd be like, "Oh man, I'm trying to grow my Instagram." Purely because at the time I was like, the goal was to get sponsors, right? And like that was how I kind of saw myself make my living. Now that I make my living completely detached from myself as an athlete, you could argue that it's interwoven a little bit, right? But as far as
Mm,
I go, like it's detached from my being an athlete. Uh, I care way less about Instagram, and therefore I have been doing it way more because I've just been like, I'm using it how I
yeah,
would have always used it. Uh, and I've purely increased my followers by just being around those guys, like you said. Um, and yeah, when I hit 10K, or as it grew a little bit, there was this moment where I was like, "Ooh, should I watch what I say?" And I'm maybe like the tiniest bit more careful, but at the same time, being like 2,500 of these people I've actually met,
yeah, yeah,
maybe, right? The other however many thousand, I have no idea who they are.
yeah,
And them me, right? Like they don't really know me either. So it's almost because there's so many more people that I don't know, I'm a little less careful about like being really exacting in my tone or like what I say because they don't know me. They're never going to, and I'm never going to know them. And
mm,
so it's like, I don't know if you've ever heard people talk about living in a big city almost makes them less visible.
lonely, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that.
And what about like say, because obviously, I know you knew like Matt and Sammy before, but obviously it's different when you're living there and it's different when you're training there, and then like there's such a large magnifying glass on Mal and on Matt because he is who he is and he was who he was in competition, and now it's like, oh, what's he going to do as a coach? And like that, there's a big narrative being written about him and then about Mal as on Hopper as well as a just a kind of an offshoot of who he was on the competition floor. I guess there's a big focus on the company, on him, on Mal, on Hopper, and then on you because you're there too and you're involved. And like you have people like the Buttery Bros come and record, or a photographer it comes, or like maybe Noble are around for Mal, or maybe like that kind of stuff. Like, does that sit naturally with you? Are you just like, yeah, okay, that's fine? Or are you like, this is fucking weird? There's cameras everywhere.
No, I feel totally fine with it.
Yeah.
I think because I know it's because we're all so comfortable with each other.
Yeah.
If I if I was like visiting, a place that wasn't my like also kind of my space that I didn't use every day, yeah, I for sure would feel a little awkward and like not know where to stand. And the first few times that I go, not just to Matt's, but like anybody else's gym, I am a little bit like, okay, I'm gonna very much make sure that I'm acting in a way that you expect in this gym. All right,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna put things away the same way you do. I'm gonna default to you to make sure that I am like cleaning up right and doing all those things. And now that I train there every single day, it's far different and far more comfortable. And like when people come in, I'll say, "Hey, the foam rollers are over there," right? Like it's the gym that I use every day. So if I wasn't as comfortable, maybe I would feel that way, but I
Mm.
don't.
What about when you're at like Mac or Granite Games at the weekend, and maybe more so Granite Games, because when you're at Mac, I guess you have a job to do and you're focused on what you're doing there, and you're, I guess, tunnel visioned a bit. But like at Granite Games, when like there was a lot of footage at the weekend, or a lot of like images at the weekend of like you guys when Mal is working, is that weird? Like when, or are you again? You've got a job to do. You're tunnel visioned on her, I guess.
Yeah, I'll touch on both the Mac and the Granite Games. I've got a job to do, one, of course, and I try to be professional and focused on that. But even so, I really don't think about the fact that there's a bunch of cameras on our crew. And the truth is, because they're not on me, they're on Matt,
Hmm.
right? Like maybe if they were on me, I would think differently, but they're on Matt, and that's the focus. And so really, I'm just some dude in the background. And so there's not a lot of stress there. At the Mac, people have asked me like a similar version of this question as far as like, do you feel pressure to perform well because you're part of that camp? I feel the least pressure that I ever have. And any pressure that I've ever felt has been put on by me. And at the end of the day, like everybody in my camp, all of my closest friends, the people who are helping me compete, they really don't care how I do. They obviously want me to do well. And I think that that might be a cliche thing to say, but it's true and should be true. And if it's not true, like you need a different crew. But at the end of the day, like when I come off Victoria, Cooper, Matt, Sammy, O'Keefe, like all they care about is that if I tried really hard and gave my full effort. And going into Mac, like I didn't feel any pressure from that side of things because in training every single day, like if I gave my full effort, Matt was like, "Hey man, good job." And same with Matt. Like the the biggest person I was afraid of not thinking I gave a full effort would be Mal. Like that is pressure that I put on myself to be like, hey, and I told her when we first started training together, I was like, I am probably not going to be able to do every single piece with you, but I'm never going to quit on you, and I'm always going to give you my full effort. And if I don't, I want you to call me out. And so that has been the last 4 months of training. So going into the competition, it was just a matter of going out there and like doing exactly what I did in training every day, and I did, and I came out and I was super content with the whole weekend on a whole, and all of the people surrounding me uh, were only proud about the effort.
There was one workout. Did you enjoy competing this year? Because I know last year you enjoyed part of it and didn't enjoy part of it. You enjoyed the part where you kind of were like didn't take it as seriously, or didn't put as much pressure on yourself. I guess didn't try to emulate what you thought other people were doing and stuff with like psychologically, we'll say, or mentality wise. Did you manage to avoid that this year? Did you get to enjoy it fully? Do you think?
Completely. This year I was a totally different competitor, and my placing was worse, right? But the field was different. The workouts were different. My training was completely different. Um, and so to leave and like I went in and I trained with the intention of like I want to make the games, and I knew that that was a long shot, especially depending before I ever got assigned to my competition. I was like, it for me, it's going to depend on the field, the workouts, like all of that. But my intention was I'm going to do everything in my power to make all of those things matter way less.
Yeah.
Right. So I trained with the goal being I want to get as good and as exposed to all of the stuff that I can going in. And the training this year was the hardest part of competing. Whereas the past, competing is the hardest part. has been for me,
Yeah.
right? Like I'd step on the floor and that'd be like the most nervous, uncomfortable, all of that that I've ever been. That all happened in training this time. So when I stepped on the floor, like there was one moment, one morning of me being like pretty down or just like not in the right headspace. And I shared it with Matt and O'Keefe and Victoria. And I was just like, hey, guys, I'm in a really bad space. Like, help talk me through this. And so those three and Cooper like really helped me through that for that moment. And then I went out there and did the first event on that day, and like it totally washed away
And
and was able to.
is that because were you like, had you realized like, oh, I'm not going to make it? Is it that was it because the goalposts had kind of shifted? Is that what brought that on? Do you think?
Yeah, it was a bit of that. There was a bit of like looking around and doing some comparison of myself to others, and a bit of realization of like, man, I'm giving everything I have, and it might not be enough. And I had kind of come to terms with that before we went in, but like that was the actual realization of it.
Hmm.
And so yeah, there was that moment was caused by that. And it was a brief moment. And after that, I enjoyed the entire weekend. It was a ton of fun. I felt like the most present that I'd ever felt on the floor. I was able to like look around and be really aware of what was going on. Um, Whereas if you asked me last year to remember any of the events, for the record, I did have fun last year, but I was just like far less uh, comfortable on the
Hmm.
floor. And this year I was super comfortable.
Yeah. I like I say at Granite at the weekend. I was thinking about it. Really got me thinking about it at Granite because it was that workout. You know, with the running,
Hmm.
the laps like around the pitch or whatever. I'm pushing the sled and whatever it was, 100 calories or 70 calories or whatever for girls. And I was just like, imagine being out there knowing that no matter what I do in this event or any other event, it's gone. Like I'm like last chance is gone. It's gone, like totally gone.
Yeah.
Or like going into that event thinking if I do well in this workout, like last chance is in my sights, and then you just see someone else, get off the bike first, or like finish the sled way fast. Like it's such a horrible workout to be on your own with your own, like literally just with your own thoughts. Like you're just staring at the screen of the assault or the echo bike or whatever.
It is. But what's interesting is because of the way that we train, it's a little different, or it's a lot different than other sports, right? So like basketball, in practice, you're running drills and like you scrimmage and you play some basketball and whatever. It doesn't really hurt,
Yeah.
right? Like it's tough, and then you go into a game, and like I think that emotion might be easier to feel, where you're like, well, what are we playing for now if it's out of
Yeah.
reach? Um, but because we smash ourselves every day in training, and like you're doing hard workouts, and on a Monday afternoon doing like the hardest workout you've ever done, in that moment you're not competing for anything, right? And like you're just choosing to go that hard because you think that it may be the thing that allows you to make the games or do well at the games. Because we do that every single day and we're like making that choice to do a really hard workout, I think when it does come to competition and the goal fades away, so whether that's making the games or the last chance qualifier, um, this is at least how I look at it. Like I'm not going to pull up because I'm not going to make it. I'm like, well, there's three more workouts. I'm not going to do them, and if I'm going to do them, I'm at least going to give them my full effort, because it often sucks worse to kind of like limp through a workout.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. That is interesting. Because, like, say, like, I love Chandler Smith, but watching that workout in particular, I was just like, my God, like, imagine what's going on between his ears. Like, where it's like, like, I don't know. It's just, it's a hard watch when you start thinking about things like that. So you've made it easier on me there, knowing that hopefully other people have the same, like, outlook as you of like, you know, just because the goalposts have shifted, I guess, doesn't mean that you just stop kicking the ball.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep going. that's not to say that I've never done that. Like, there's certainly been moments of more in training, less in competition, of being like, I'm so far behind, or like this workout's going so poorly. Why even do it?
Yeah.
Like that thought is there. And if anybody tells you that it's never ever there, like there's no way that's true. Like that
Yeah.
happens to all of us. So yeah, I'm sure Chandler had some tough thoughts going through his head, but I think he finished the weekend pretty strong, all things considered, and I think he had something else going on. I don't know that. I
Yeah,
just
there
assume.
seemed to have been a lot of people. Usually, where there's smoke, there's fire, and a lot of people were saying, and when that many people are saying something was up, it tends to be there
Yeah.
was something up. Um, how long do you think you'll compete for?
Oh man, that's a good question. I don't know. I genuinely enjoy like the competitive aspect. And what I mean is like specifically being on the floor next to somebody and kind of racing them. But I have a couple team competitions lined up. I'm doing one in Italy
Oh, cool.
with a pretty solid team. And by pretty solid, I mean really solid team. They're three really good athletes. Uh, and then after that, I don't really know what's next.
What competition is that in Italy?
It's called Wad for Mori,
Is that the one?
Mori,
Where is it? What city? Do you know what city it's in?
Sardinia.
Yeah, I think there's an Irish team doing that. I think Yellow Belly are doing that. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting competition. I think it's going to be a really good time.
It's a good excuse to go to Italy, if nothing else.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big one.
Yeah. When everyone hears your name, they start like fluently talking in Italian to you, expecting you to just join in.
True. I was like, phew, phew.
Oh, actually,
I
funny
don't
story
know.
about your name. I we were watching you compete, and we were watching like the next day because like just time zones. And my my wife goes, "Who's that?" Uh, I said, "Oh, there he is." And my wife said, "There's who?" And I said, "Jake." And then she said, "Jake who?" And no offense. And I said, I said Jake Marconi. And my daughter goes, "Jake Macaroni," and she said it about 50 times that day. And I was like, "That's so funny that she, made that same
That
leap." I just
joke.
thought it was hilarious. Yeah.
There was a couple volunteers that were checking me in that were like, "Hey, have you ever thought about changing your name to Macaroni? Because that's kind of what it looks like." And I was like, "Yeah, no, a lot of people call me that."
um, when you, uh, so your Mal's training partner will say, is that going to
Yes.
continue up to the games?
Yeah. So you asked me how long I want to compete. I genuinely don't know the answer to that question long term on the individual side. I love doing team competitions,
Hmm.
so I'll keep doing that. Uh, so for that reason, I'm going to keep doing CrossFit, and I enjoy it. But I've got a couple other training goals that I want to focus on at the current moment, most of which are aesthetic and some are strength. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that type of lifting. I'm going to do a bunch of bodybuilding and strength work, and then I'll jump in with Mal for her pretty much for her shittiest conditioning pieces.
Lovely.
So like I'll take a session and then we'll try to get some other people around to maybe take a session. But I will help her prepare for the games. I'll continue to be her training partner.
And is the bodybuilding thing, is that because you've been watching Matt do it, like as you've been training for semifinals, thinking, "Oh, I want to do that instead of this"?
Oh man, there's been days where he's like, I'm just gonna bench and do some curls. And I'm like, that sounds so sweet. I would love to do that. Um, but no, it's just like I got into this whole thing because I wanted to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Um, and when you're competing in CrossFit specifically, like that's just kind of not on the table. You have to eat for performance, and then you train, and your body just kind of takes the shape that it will.
Hmm.
And I want to take a little bit of time to specifically work on some things that I've been wanting to for a while,
That's cool.
but choosing not
Um,
to.
how good is Hopper, do you think?
Of an athlete,
Yeah, like as a person, no, as an athlete, yeah.
oh, he's a great person. No, he's really good. I talk to him every single day and like write his programming, and Matt and I collaborate on like everything with him, and so I know all of his numbers, but I don't get to see him in person that often. And he came up a little bit before Syndicate, like a couple
Mm.
weeks for a few days in Vermont, and I was blown away because I hadn't seen him in person in like 6 months, and he was just absurdly fit, and has gotten like significantly better in the last year.
When you say better, do you just mean like his movement is better or his mindset is better or?
There are some things that like he was really raw when he competed last year, like
Mm.
super, super raw. And he has refined a ton of his game in the last year and like really nailed down some skills that he was working on, and like has really refined his approach to training. You can learn a lot or like see a lot about an athlete when they train. And you can see folks who are raw and talented and like have a lot of capacity. And then you can see people who have those things but are also dialed in and have their routine, and you can see that they're being intentional about their training. And I saw all that when Jay was in town. And so I had an inkling that he might have a really good run at the syndicate, and he did.
And were you able to like? Is it hard then when, because obviously that's a different weekend than you were competing, but it's close to when you're competing. So is it hard to, you know, focus on someone else when your time is coming so quickly around the corner?
So he had Matt at syndicate in person, so that didn't stress me out. Like if I had to
Okay.
go there and coach him while I was going to compete the week later, yeah, that would be stressful. But he had Matt, and Matt like coached him the entire weekend. Um, but when he was visiting, I was actually taking 2 days off of training because I was having like some pretty bad workouts. And Matt finally goes, "Hey, are you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he goes, "All right, take 2 days off." So I was not training when he was in town.
Okay.
So all I was doing was stretching and watching, which made it easy to focus on somebody else.
That's handy. Yeah, that's good
Yeah.
timing. Um, like, I'm conscious about him that. So I've never spoken to him, but I've seen him on Savannah's show, and I've seen him compete last year, obviously, and this year. But like, there's a there's a thing of even before Matt started working with him, and you started working with him, and he officially became part of the stable. I guess there's a thing of like, I just remember when he was holding up the sword, like last year at Mac or whatever, there was just this thing of like, oh, perfect, we've got our successor. Like this is the next Fraser's here now. This is perfect. This is ideal. He's after beating Medeiros. Like that's job done. The next 5 years, easy. And then that was heightened when there was pictures of Matt and him together at, I don't know, some random gym in, I don't know, was it Vegas or where, around West Coast or something. There was like some pictures, and then it was like, oh, he's joined GoWad. Matt was with GoWad, and then it was like, oh, he's joined Nike. Like Matt's with Nike, and there's just like endless comparison or endless, like, it just seemed to me the narrative that was being written was, you know, the king is dead, long live the king. Like, like Matt's gone, Hopper's here, we're sorted. And then at the games, it didn't go to plan, and it just looked like, by and large, I'd say, it just from my perspective, anyway, it looked like he just had a horrendous time. Like, it just didn't click for him, and it was just rough. It seemed like it was rough going for him. And then I think half of people just wrote him off completely and were like, gone. Like, we were definitely wrong about him. And then the other half of people just saw that as a blip and were like, as soon as this year started ramping up, it seemed to intensify this view of like, well, he's going to be the obvious challenger to Medeiros now. And like, it's a shit ton of pressure to put on someone who, as you say, is like raw. Like, his fans last year had like these shitty t-shirts with marker, like Sharpie or whatever. And like, to have that much pressure put on you, and like immediate pressure, because I think he was supposed to compete at Atlas, wasn't it, the year before, and then that was cancelled, and like it was like the last event that was cancelled or whatever, I think. So like,
Yeah, something happened.
nobody really knew. He just, it appeared from the unknowing onlooker's perspective, it appeared that like, whoa, this guy just fucking burst on the scene from nowhere. Whereas obviously he'd been putting in work or whatever. But like from our perspective, it was like, who the fuck is this guy? Where's he come from? And then to have all that pressure heaped on him, like, is that something you talk to him about, or that Matt talks to him about, like how to deal with that kind of stuff, or is it just kind of implicit that he knows how to do it?
Yeah. Well, let me address the first part. Where all that came from and where people started to be like, "Oh, he's going to be the successor." You said it exactly. He burst onto the scene, right? Nobody knew of him before. He was obviously putting in work in the dark, but then he comes out and wins this competition and beats Medeiros. And I think that CrossFit media specifically latches onto the first piece of the story, and then that the whole community runs with that forever, right? So somebody goes, he wins, somebody goes, he's next, and then everybody goes, well, he's next, right? I don't think he thought he was next. I don't think his team thought he was next. I think they all were like, no, we prepared completely for this competition, and we went and we made the goal, right? And we blew the goal out of the water, won the competition, and we, meaning his previous
Yeah, yeah.
team and him. And then going to the games that year, I honestly haven't asked him this. I don't know if he thought he was going to win, but I know that he was going to get an experience at the games, right? And that's exactly what he got. He trained for the MAC. He won the MAC. That the whole goal was to make it to the games. And then that in between was when everybody was like, well, he beat Justin, he's going to win, without taking into consideration the fact that Justin probably did not peak for the MAC, right? He was like, no, I just have to go and qualify. Fifth is still qualifying, so I've got to take top five. And then the games is the focus. Well, for Jay, the MAC was the focus. So that pressure came, I don't think from himself, from everybody outside. And then when he went to the games, he was raw and hadn't experienced that level of competition. And when people say that level of competition, I don't mean the ability of the folks there. I mean doing 15 events across 4 days and having those events be really long, really short, really heavy, weird objects, right? And so he walked away from the games and was like, oh, all right, I've got to get some experience on these things. And I learned a lot. And that's when Matt started working much more closely with him. And they have a lot of those conversations. I don't talk to him about pressure because I've never had that type of pressure. But Matt definitely has helped him through a lot of that. And that is a lot of what has changed in the last years. He's gone from being this raw, talented athlete who's worked very hard to this athlete who has dialed things in, worked super hard, has chased down his weaknesses, and has developed a new mindset. And I think we saw that at the syndicate.
Maybe it's a question for Matt, but I just like, do you think that had Hopper reacted differently to the games, his experience at the games, do you think would Matt's how invested Matt has become in him have changed? As in, like, if he had coming away from it being like, well, that was fun, would Matt be like, no, maybe he doesn't have it? Whereas like when he was like, okay, I need to get better at this, would Matt be like, okay, yeah, I like that, I like what I'm hearing from him and from Jake about him, so I'm gonna do more?
That's a good question. I mean, he invested in Jay before I was ever a part of that. Um, but that is a good question. I think that no, if Jay came away, because I think you can have both. You can come away and go, "That was fun," but I need to work on some shit.
Yeah, yeah.
He would still have the same level of investment.
Yeah. I guess the only is if he came away being like, well, that was nice. Then maybe he would have been like, okay, fuck this guy.
Yeah, if he came away and was just like, "Cool, I'm happy with like doing exactly what I did this year
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and seeing what happens next year," yeah, he probably would be like, "Yeah, all right, well, that's not the right mindset." And I don't know that he would have walked away. He probably would have just talked to him.
Yeah, yeah. So I like Granite this weekend, like, man, it was just fucking ridiculous. Like it was like on whatever morning it was, no, whatever night, Sunday night, just before the rope workout. I put it on the TV and my wife and in-laws were there and they were like, "Oh, who's at this?" And I was like saying a few of the names and then my wife's like, "Oh, isn't Mal at this?" And I was like, "Yeah, do you want to hear results so far?" And I was like, she was like, "Oh, is it not going well?" Because like I think a lot of people were kind of, not a lot of people, but I think some people were thinking, "Oh, maybe last year was a fluke," or like that's always the people
Yeah,
just have
people
that. Maybe people want it. I don't know. But like she was like, "Oh, is it not going well?" Or and I think as well, I'm the same as like we're both teachers and we both have a daughter. Obviously, we both have a daughter. Doesn't make any sense, but you know what I mean. Um, but I think we kind of get. I know I do anyway. I don't want to speak for her, but I get kind of protective over like the young athletes because I have a son and I have a daughter, and I like if people start, I don't know, like talking shit about them or whatever, or like wanting them to do badly. I'm like, why? Like, why would you like? They're a fucking kid. Like, why would you want that?
100%.
But I was like, well, I'll tell you the results and you tell me what position you think she's in. So I was like, first, fifth, first. And then she was like, fuck off. Like, seriously? And I was like, yeah. Her dad was like, who's this? I was like, Mal O'Brien. And he was like, isn't she the one who's like 16 and from the arsehole of nowhere in the middle of America? And I was like, yeah. Well, I was like, yeah, she's not 16 anymore, but she did once live in the arsehole of America. And now she's like, she's with Fraser and HWPO and whatever. And he was like, God, that is insane. And like, it was incredible. Now, there's three people that stood out to me um, at Granite: her, Anthony Davis, and Matt DeLugos. And the three people who I think Mal's holes were smaller to fill in, but the three of them just filled in holes like a crazy amount from last year. Like think of DeLugos at West Coast Classic, and then DeLugos at Granite Games. If he had a higher
Oh,
pull up, if he had a higher pull up bar, he's going to the games. And like compare that to West Coast Classic to Lugos, and it was like I remember watching that, being like, oh, I really want him to do well. Like I want him to qualify, and then just being like, oh fuck. Whereas like this year, I was like, holy shit, like he could, like it seemed like it was really, really possible. Whereas I think last year there was no real point where it seemed like it was possible beyond like once the first workout was over. Um, Anthony Davis, big lift last year. Wow, that's impressive. The rest of the workouts is kind of like, right, okay, like he's a big lift guy. Whereas this year was like he really fucking held his own in a running workout. He really held his own in a gymnastics workout. Like he filled in a lot of holes. And Mal the same. It was like people talk about being consistent and they talk about that pan check uh, finish. Like
yep.
fourth, 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 fourth. You'll finish first. Like that's
Yeah.
the way to do it. Her consistency is like first, which is like fucking terrifying.
I oh man, there's so much right there to talk about. First of all, I agree with you so much on Anthony Davis and DeLugos. Those were the two guys that I was super impressed with because I competed against Anthony last year. And he even looks better this year. Like
Mm,
I didn't talk to him about this. I like him a lot. He looked like he was a little lighter and he moved so much quicker.
yeah,
Uh, the thing that I was really impressed with was so I wasn't really paying attention to the men's side too much because I was focused on Mal. And when I looked at the leaderboard after like 3 or 4 workouts and saw where he was and saw his times, and I was like, I wouldn't have guessed that at
yeah,
all. He improved a ton. And then DeLugos I trained with or I did quarterfinals with last
yeah,
year. And so going into West Coast Classic, I was like, yeah, I figured the workouts he'd do well on and not. And then I haven't really talked to him much or like had a beat on what he was doing for the last year. And he came out and I saw him in the thruster handstand workout. I was like, wow, he has put in a ton of work. I knew he'd do well on the lift. Like he's a super
yeah.
strong dude. Um, and then I was right in front of his lane for the last one,
Oh, the rope climb. That
the
was
rope climb.
intense.
It was intense. And I saw the guys come out on the field and he was doing like the linebacker kind of like skip
Yeah.
out. And Matt and I turned to each other and we were like, oh, he's going to win the workout. And then he just stayed super chill for 5 rounds, and then he started sprint like to the point where I was a little bit like, "You're going really fast. Are you sure you want to go that fast?" And he accelerated every single round until he finished the workout. And he came across the finish line and literally was like coming right across at me and was screaming. And I was holding onto the barricade. In my head, I was like, he is 100% gonna take me out. But it was super cool to see because he improved so much, like
Yeah,
to a point that
crazy.
I wasn't sure was possible in a year.
Yeah,
And
immense.
against a good men's field too. Like it's not as though West Coast was super stacked and he like got pushed down the
Yeah,
leaderboard, and this wasn't. Like he had a lot of good competitors. And then Mal, I think the thing that I don't know will get talked about as much as it should is the fact that her margins of victory
yeah,
were huge. It wasn't like she edged out a first place and was like, oh, she was 6 seconds ahead. It was like minute ahead, minute ahead, minute
yeah.
ahead.
But even the one that was close, the
Yeah.
handstand, there was this like I'm trying to think of how to describe it. It's the snapping of the band that Fraser's talked about before, where like she got a no rep at the very start, had to go back. She wasn't fucking stopping, and like the
No.
second she caught up, you could just see like Danny just looked defeated. It was just like, okay, and it was just she snapped the band by going, like it was just like a killer instinct of other people would have gotten the no rep and been like, fuck, like, okay, second, it's not, it's like second's
Yeah.
fine. But
Like
like
second is fine.
she would have handstand walked through her judge if she had to, like it was, she wasn't going to stop. And I thought that was like, she did like a shit ton of really impressive stuff where I was like, fuck, okay. But I just thought that was like properly impressive. Like to come back and to keep going beyond the point where she should have probably stopped. Like if she'd been on her own, she probably would have stopped there and then kicked back up and gone again. But she knew if she stopped, it was gone. And if she kept going, like once she put one hand past that line, she won the workout because, like, unless she fell over,
Yeah.
the other, the band was snapped. That was it. And I think, like, I just thought that was incredibly impressive.
She has this intensity every single day that is unmatched.
Hmm.
Like, I've trained with a lot of people, and she is going hard as she possibly can in every single workout.
Do you think is there like does that put a finite or a ceiling on competitive career when somebody's like that? Like, is there
No,
a
I mean, because it's within reason, right? So, like, if you're going as hard as you can on a workout, I'm saying that to say that she's always like trying her hardest
yeah,
and never just being like, well, I'll just kind of 80% it through this. It's not to say that she's reckless.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think, yeah, if you're like, oh, my elbow has been hurting for 6 months, I'm going to do 50 muscle ups because I'm tough. Like, yeah, that puts a cap on your career, but that's not
yeah.
what I'm talking about.
So with Hopper, so we talked about that storyline or that narrative that's been written or that had been written and will probably be written again this summer, I guess. The obviously the story that's written about Mal is like there's already been questions being asked on numerous different shows and numerous different outlets and stuff of like, oh, can Mal beat Tia? Like that's the storyline. Is I think everybody's just searching for someone who can beat Tia. That's what because you have to make it interesting and like truth be told, like it hasn't. There have been a lot of interesting storylines on the female side, but it was like when Matt was competing, it's like, okay, who's coming second? Like that's been
Hmm.
the story. Um, do you guys like do you try to protect her from that kind of stuff, from that kind of pressure or that kind of um I don't know, because it's hard. It just must be hard when that's the assumption. Like when it's like, well, anything other than first is losing. You know, like, and it's
Yeah,
hard
I
when
mean,
the person who's consistently first is fucking insanely good.
yeah, that is more of a question for Mal, but I can speak to the fact that I don't think that is her mindset.
Hmm.
That anything other than first is losing it. She's in the gym every day trying to get better on the things that she can. She's well aware of what she can and cannot control, and that's something that like you simply can't control, right? Like
Hmm.
you can't control how much better any other female in the field gets. Uh, and she shows up every day, and like this is a lot of people say this, but she genuinely does everything in her power to improve and to recover and to like be able to take all those steps. And I think that's where the comfort for her probably comes. At least it is for me. Like, and I have never been under that level of pressure or those assumptions. But like, what my security blanket going into a competition is just knowing that I've done all the things that I can possibly do going into the competition, and then the results fall where they are. I also don't think that just from conversations, people who win, like Matt and Tia and Mal and whomever else, they are not in agreement with all the people going, well, it's a shoe in for Matt to win. Like,
Hmm.
I don't think Matt ever went into the games being like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to win, you know?
Yeah, but I suppose the flip side of it is he's probably going into the games, and he said that he trained afraid or whatever. But like, they're probably going into the games thinking everyone thinks I'm going to win. Ergo, if I don't win, I've failed. Whereas like second at the games is pretty fucking good. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the psychology of champions is super interesting.
yeah, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was like, people like Matt or people like, I don't know, maybe because I've talked to you more, I kind of don't include you in it because I know that you're kind of rational and jovial and like relaxed and stuff, and same with like say Tim Paulson or people I've talked to a lot. I kind of know like, okay, yeah, they're kind of chill. But maybe I need to extend that to people I don't know that well. But like, I just feel like there has to be something wrong with you to go to that level. Like, there has to be something. You're just, I know, like, okay, I could probably word it better. You're wired differently, I think, because
Yeah, I
like,
agree with you. I don't think that there's anything wrong. They're just wired differently and they're monomaniacal,
yeah,
right? Like they're so focused on that thing, and that's what they want to do. And not everybody is that way, which is
yeah,
why like not a, not everybody's a champion. Not everybody's like um, a high level in the thing that they like. And whenever you meet like I hear people talk about, or hold on, there's a fly right here. I missed it. I hear people talk about like, oh, this person's not balanced, or like they don't have a good life balance, or they're like, oh, is that sustainable? And really, the rub is like, if you're going to be the best in the world at something, like it's truly not balanced,
hmm,
and you're not searching for it, right? Like those people, when Matt was competing, he never was like, oh, I should try to balance my life more and do more social activities.
yeah,
He was like, no, I'm doing this thing, and that is what I'm going to do until I've completed the thing. And that is not how everybody operates, which is
yeah.
why is why all of us are not champions in something.
But the thing that terrifies me is, say like you finished 17th at Mac, and then you look at the gap between 17th and first. Like, Saxon was first, wasn't he? So
Yep.
you look at the gap there, and then you look at the gap between, so say like even top five at all these different semifinals. You look at the guy who's in 30th, right, at all the semifinals, and you're like, relative to the field, you're like, okay, he's last, but like relative to Gen Pop, like fucking incredible, like just a specimen of athleticism and power and speed, and like a decathlete times 10 who can just do stupid stuff with ridiculous amount of apparatus and, just engine systems and everything. And then you look at the top 5 in that semi-final compared to like the top 5 of the games, and you're like, fucking hell, like how can the gap from first to 30th at the games and from first to 30th at the semi-finals be so vast? Like, it's a fucking terrifying sport when you really start. Like, you really do want to be, like, you really, really need to want it to finish a semi-final and then watch the games and then be like, I'm going again.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head that in this sport, more than, and I haven't competed at like the high level of anything else, but in CrossFit, you really have to want it. Like that
Yeah,
is the crux of the whole thing. Because if you're training and you don't really like, if you don't genuinely want it, there's no fucking point
yeah.
to hurt that bad. It's really hard to make yourself go, well, this is worth like destroying myself right now for.
But the thing as well is, like, say you will just create a hypothetical athlete who finishes 30th at Atlas, right? Just
Hmm.
a fake person. We'll just say it's me, right? Somehow I'm in the wrong continent, but anyway, I finished 30th at a semi-final, and I've trained really hard, worked really hard, whatever, and I've got like a sponsor, and they, not enough to pay my rent or whatever, but it helps me maybe only need to coach like 2 classes a week instead of all of them, and that's the level I'm at. And then I think, okay, I want it. But then you have those other things of like, oh, I need to pay rent, and I need to, I need to support my family, or I need to whatever. And then you have those things of like, oh, look, someone wants to buy my programming, or someone's asked me, maybe if I launch programming, that would be a good avenue. That would, because then I won't have to coach at all in person. I could, train and just sell my pro. But obviously, that's going to take up bandwidth, and that's going to take up time, and it's going to take up energy, and you're staring at a screen, and that's not good for recovery and all that other shit. Like, it really is so finely balanced that like one thing eating up too much of your bandwidth will just push you back. You'll just be going on. I picture it going on, the travelator thing in the airport. You're going the
Hmm.
wrong way, but you're walking. So you're just kind of staying still, but you're putting in all this effort. And it's just like you're just not moving forwards or backwards. You're just kind of staying where you are, even though it feels like you're working really hard. But it's like it's such a hard sport because of that, because you don't have, outside of the top 10 at the game, say, you don't really have those opportunities to say, okay, I'm going all in on this, as in I'm in a position to go all in, unless like I move back in with my parents or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's why you're going to see the sport be a little younger
Mm,
in the coming years. I think, um, and I think everybody's thinking that as well. That the sport is getting a bit younger and younger. That's one of the reasons is
yeah,
you're going to have a little more opportunity, and then that is a big conversation on the back end of the sport is how do we get athletes able to make a living so that they can continue to progress and have this be an actual sport. Because man, I would say that probably 7 7 through 30 at all these semifinals have jobs, like full-time real jobs,
yeah,
or have gone the other route and they're like, I'm coaching just enough to make it, and this is the dream.
yeah.
But the majority of us at these semifinals are not professional athletes that make our entire living off of it.
Be interested to see if anyone in that position goes to the games and like like does well at the games. Like anyone in the, because
I'm
it's only
sure,
whatever 30.
I don't know off the top of my head of anybody specific, but I'm positive that there are people that have
Well,
full-time
Colton
jobs
Mertens,
that,
he's a pig farmer.
yeah,
That's the one.
yeah.
Um, I felt so bad for the two of them because it was the same two guys last year.
Oh, yeah.
But what I will say is, so you were at Granite Games last year,
Yeah.
and no disrespect to the guy, I actually don't know his name, but I can picture him in my head, the announcer. Um, that was one of the worst things I've ever seen last year. with that announcement where they were saying who was fifth and who was sixth, and they dragged it out. Like, I don't know, was it for suspense's sake? Did he not have the name or what? But he, like, the camera's on the two of them, and he must have made, like, he was making jokes about, you know,
Oh, I forgot about that. You started to
oh,
bring this up, and I was like, I don't think I saw this.
I will
Yeah,
never
I
forget that
remember that.
for the rest of my life. I was like, I need to just die, and I'm not even involved in this. Like,
It's
I was
just that
like,
secondhand awkwardness.
oh my God. What secondhand? I wasn't even in the fucking country that it was happening in. And I was like, I need to die. This is not okay. And like, I remember Colton Merton's face when he did it like the fourth time. He was like, just like, he didn't say this exactly, but it was more or less saying, and the winner is the person who has won the competition, like that kind of shit. And it was
Yeah.
just like, oh my God, why are you doing this? Like, what? Like, why are you doing this? And I remember at one point, Colton Merton's face was like, I'm gonna pick up this fucking barrier behind me. He's just like, so thankfully this year, and he was the announcer at Mac as well.
Hmm.
No, at Syndicate, the most recent one. Both times he did it this weekend as well. Both times he said, I'm not going to drag it out.
Yeah, I
I was
did hear
like,
him say that
is
when he
that
announced.
reference to last year? Did someone say to him, like, don't fucking drag it out this time?
Wow,
Oh,
I totally forgot about that, but I remember being in the moment and hearing that announcement
oh my
and
God.
being like, "Oh man, that is tough."
Like, not
And
the time.
they always drag it out a little bit.
Yeah. It's like, on X Factor or America's Got
Yeah.
Talent or whatever, where there's a pause. But like, that's like a pregnant pause. This was
Yeah.
like, I don't know, multiple births pause. I don't know what. It was
Yeah.
like labor pause. Fucking hell, it was
Yeah.
awful. Um, Yeah, it's awful. My God, I actually feel shit just thinking about it again.
He's getting stressed out again.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned earlier on that HWPO is, first of all, actually, and again, maybe you want to defer this to somebody else, but do you think that athletes at this level go into the games like Mal and Hopper? Do you think when you have Mal and Hopper that you can only have Mal and Hopper as,
As athletes.
yeah,
Uh, that's kind of been our general ethos is that we have a male and a female.
yeah?
Um, other camps do it, right? They have a couple of women or a couple of men,
Underdogs has 15 according to Kotler. He said that the other day.
15 athletes.
Yeah, but like as in with either going to or with aspirations to go to
Yeah, I mean, he had
in-house.
Alex. He had Alex last week,
He
and
has Scuds next week.
Matt Scuds next week. Mitch McClune, who's Carrie Pierce's boyfriend.
Yeah.
Um, Danielle, Ricky,
Bethany when she's fit.
Bethany. Yeah, he does have a
Crazy.
lot. Yeah, he
Yeah.
has a lot. I think you can have more than two,
You just
for
have to be
sure.
careful, I guess, of who you
Yeah,
pick.
I think that it's not the primary function of HWPO
Yeah.
to have games athletes, and Matt had always trained with one male and one female. Well, him being the male, but it was always like him and Tia.
Hmm.
So that has been our general ethos.
Um. So you mentioned that you're programming Can West. You're programming Madrid as well, aren't you?
Hmm.
I think. Um. And something else, something in South America, Colombia.
Finland,
That's in
Finland.
Colombia, is it?
Yep.
Man, it's gonna you're gonna have a serious summer of travel, or
Oh
like
yeah.
autumn of travel. When you're programming those events, so you said that you kind of talk to the organizers about, I guess like what's the venue and what kind of vibe you're looking for or whatever. How many events, like that kind of shit. And then when you go and talk to Matt and you sit down, like, is that like there's a lot of pressure with that because I guess from like you want the workouts to be a good test for the athletes and to find the best athlete that's at the competition, and like that's the goal of the workouts, but you also have to please maybe like sponsors, or you also have to please the crowd, or you have to think about like the judges. Like it's a lot different from programming a workout for Hopper to do so that he can get better at running.
Certainly. A lot of the process is like you throw everything on a whiteboard, you pick out what would be ideal, and then you plug in all those other inputs to
Yeah.
it, which is the same way I program individual programs. Is like, let's lay out what would be the absolute ideal week or day or couple of months. And then you take into consideration, if it's for an individual, like their schedule, how many kids they have,
Yeah.
what's going to be realistic. And then you start adding or taking away or modifying based on that. Same when you write a competition. And like we're at the beginning stages of a lot of this, right? So our process will become more refined as we go. But at the current moment, we take everything that we want to do, put it down on paper, and then start going, okay, this sponsor needs to be considered. Where can we consider them? Sometimes it's the opposite. It's like, okay, this is a sponsor. Let's write the workout around that.
Yeah.
You look at the venue and you say, and this is like not anything secret, but you look at the venue and go, oh, there's this type of terrain. Like we'll run this type of event on this floor, this type of event on that floor. When it feels really kind of overwhelming or like there's a lot of pressure, it's when you've done none of that and you're just kind of looking at like, wow, we have to write an entire event.
Yeah.
But that stuff makes it easier because it gives you parameters to work in, right?
I
Saying
suppose
like, here's
it's
the
like writing a
rubric.
book. If you just look at a blank page and a flashing cursor, you're like, oh fuck, where do I start? Whereas
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
have like a little spider map or whatever, you can kind of, not that I've ever written a book, but you know what I mean?
But in theory, writing a
Yeah, yeah,
book,
yeah.
yeah, same.
Yeah. If I was to write my successful novel, what I would do.
Is not start with a blank page.
um, are you going to Colombia when that's on?
I'm going to all of them. Yeah.
Oh, I expect a lot of coffee content when you're in Colombia. I'll be living vicariously through you whenever you're
Oh,
down there. So,
that's a good point. I actually didn't even think about that.
yeah. Or cocaine.
We'll probably go coffee. If it's going to be content, I'll have to tell you the cocaine stories.
Yeah, you can add me to. You can make one of those little friends stories thing on Instagram
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
cocaine ones. Yeah,
the close
yeah.
friends.
Listen, it's been great catching up with you. It's always a pleasure. You're one of my favorites. I think you're just incredibly insightful and honest, and just good fun as well. So it's been great catching up, and we'll do it again. And best of luck with your um just, I assume, absolutely fucking abhorrent conditioning pieces that you got coming up with Mal, and best of luck with everything. Are you gonna be like
Thank you.
at the games wearing a coach's like wristband and badge and shit?
No, I think you know what? That's a good question. I don't know. I think with Mal and Jason both back there, yeah, I might have one.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
You get to be one of those, like, it's fucking bullshit how they treat coaches.
Oh, just yelling about, just complaining about shit. This should
Yeah,
be different. That should be different. Yelling on the
carrying
sidelines. That was a
carrying
bad call.
your little snack baggie.
Should I bring a
Reality.
whistle? Just start whistling at the
I
refs, calling a
almost
timeout.
guarantee that will be on the prohibited items list. A whistle.
It always is.
Oh, do you know what you could bring though? Because I assume when they say whistle, they mean like that one. But you could bring, one of those ones where you pull down the, like the lollipop.
Yes.
You definitely, or one of those lollipops that is a whistle
A
itself.
kazoo. I could bring a kazoo.
Yeah, yeah. If we hear that in the coverage, we'll know it's you.
That's
Um,
Jake.
yeah. Listen, it's been great talking to you, and yeah, I'll talk to you again shortly, I suppose. But this is coming out in a couple of weeks, so I'll tag you in some stuff when it's coming out.
Sweet. Thanks for having me on.